the night, weak of heart, don't even fight. Well, I lead a life, but evil's in us. Angel in black, she took me down to hell and back. She's cold and ready to attack. She's
Non-stop rock talk with Tyson Bryden.
Welcome to another episode of Non-Stop Rock Talk. Today on the show, I would like to welcome legendary guitarist Steve Lynch. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on.
No problem. I mean, I've been kind of looking forward to this today and writing up my notes and
All right.
yeah. So I mean, I've been a big fan for a long time. So not only as a guy doing a podcast, I mean, that style of music going back to, the 80s was my whole life, I guess you could say. I mean, I remember buying the cassette of That's the Stuff at like a local store back in the day. And
Yeah.
opening
Back in
it
the
and
early
bringing-
days, way back in the 80s. It was a lot of fun, though, I'll tell you that much.
Well, I mean, you can tell in the book, which we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
which is leading me to that is Confessions of a Rock Guitarist, which
There it is. There's my life right there.
Exactly. It's funny because I was actually on a trip I was at a gig and I went out to Winnipeg and I flew 700 kilometers from Winnipeg on a small plane.
Uh-huh.
It was in the book that I was kind of reading about your journeys up to Canada in the,
Yeah.
which is so it was kind of ironic at the same time. So anyways, we flew to this thing and I was reading the book on the airplane and then coming back and we got to the airport and I had my guitar and my bag and I put the book in a cart.
Uh-huh.
And I went through, it wouldn't be customs, through security. And I was like, I went and got something to eat. And I was like, uh-oh, where's the book? I left it on the other side. So I had to go back through
boy.
security and it was gone. So
Oh, my God.
so right away, I went on Amazon because I was like 3/4 of the way through.
Right.
And anyways, I actually ended up buying 2 copies of the book.
Okay. Cha-ching for me, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But it was worth it because I didn't want to go without finishing it. Right. So,
Yeah.
so
exactly.
I mean, it was a great read. It really was.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. I had some little bit of stories back there in the 70s, actually,
Right.
where the band I was in at the time, well, there was a couple different bands. There was Outlawed and then the Ross Taylor Band, it was the Ross Taylor Band where we went up on that trip up to Yukon territory. And we went up the Snowy Pass,
Which was
way up there.
That was
On
crazy.
this mountaintop, with all these loggers that played it. We played in the cage, because they were getting drunk. They would drink, shots of this. Oh God, what was it called? Snowshoes. Remember the shots of snowshoes?
I've
It's like
never heard
it's
of
like it's like wild turkey whiskey and some other ingredients, but they would do those and cream de menthe. That's what it was.
Okay.
And so, then they would get drunk and they would eat mescaline, so they were super high too, and they would end up throwing bottles at the band. So, and of course we expected that. And so they did. They started throwing bottles and glasses and pitchers at the band, and then they started heaving chairs. And that's why they had not only the bars up around the band, all the way encircling the cage, but they had this heavy-duty chicken wire, too, so that you were protected from all this barrage of stuff that was coming at you. And that was the wildest gig I ever played, I swear. So,
That's kind of like the Blues Brothers.
yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I never thought about that, but yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it was like that. So there are places like that, and they proved it in the Blues Brothers, So
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've never experienced.
Well, that was the only time I had experienced it. So,
Wow, that's crazy. The one thing I loved about the book was not just the rock stories, which were great, but it was the stories outside of that, of your life, and you living in a tent at 15 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad kicked me out of the house because I refused to go to school. I was going to be a guitar player. So he said, well, that's fine,
Yeah.
but you can't live here if you're not going to school. So I asked him if I could borrow the old tent that we didn't use anymore anyway. And he says, you can have that old thing, So I went and pitched it up next to a friend of mine's house. He had a vacant lot next to him. So I cleared out all these sticker pushes and I set it up in there and ran out an electrical cable from the extension cord from their place into my tent. So I had heat and I had light and I had my alarm and everything. And so that's where it all started. That was in 1970. And then, but I enjoyed it because of the fact that I could play whenever I wanted, and so it was great. And I was working at a stereo shop, so I'd ride my bicycle down to the stereo shop, which was just a couple miles away, and I'd go make stereo speakers all day. And so I learned about all these PA systems and how to wire crossovers and drill the holes in the baffle boards for the speakers and everything. And there's a whole story about that in there too. I almost lost my hand doing that, and that's when I quit that day after working there for a couple of years. And so yeah, it was a lot of different tragedies and triumphs along the way. Yeah.
Well, and then there was like the drug addiction
yeah.
Right. And it blew me away because I'm thinking in some ways that is something you do when, like most rock stars
right.
when they become rock stars.
Right. I got out of the way early and I cut it off.
Yeah.
Said, nope.
You were practicing.
Yeah, exactly.
You were practicing.
I was practicing to be a rock star. Exactly. But I did it way beforehand, and that was before I even moved into the tent. But, that was like when I first turned 15, it was that summer. And so, and then that fall I moved into the tent. So, but I got off right at the end of that summer. So, and I never went back. I was going, no way, never going through that again. The withdrawals were hellacious. But I only did it for 4 months. But still, you get addicted during that time. You get seriously addicted. So there's some serious consequences with the withdrawals and all that. It's no fun. I don't recommend that to anybody.
No, and and you got through it, and you kept going, and in that time period of playing guitar, like you were obviously playing all the time, every day in the tent. What would you be working on guitar wise?
Well, I had a little portable record player in there, so I could play the 33s, and I would practice trying to figure out like Jimi Hendrix, like everything on Are You Experienced, and then I got into some of the Jeff Beck. When he like the Truth album and all that, when that was in the late 60s. And so then when Led Zeppelin came out, of course I was trying to learn everything off the first and the second album by ear, and so that's what I really did. I didn't have lessons at that time. I didn't take those for years later. And so it was just learning by ear. And I was just so amazed by these guitar players. And then, of course, Dark Side of the Moon came out. And then I went, oh, my God, I got to learn everything by David Gilmour. That was in 1973. And so, yeah, I played in 3 different bands before I moved down to L.A. in the beginning of 1978 to go to the Guitar Institute of Technology, So, I'd been playing professionally already, for 5 years before I went down there. Yeah. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And GIT must have been, reading it in the book and what amazed me is the fact that your technique, you had already written books before you even got into autograph.
Yeah. What happened was I had experimented with the technique a little bit, in like 75, 76, back in that time. I saw Harvey Mandel doing it. There was another guy, Steve Buffington in Seattle, that used a little bit of it. So I curiously started fooling around with it, and I really liked the way it sounded, that legato sound. And so then when I went to the Guitar Institute in the beginning months, there was the guy, Emmett Chapman, who invented the instrument, the stick that you play with both hands. And
I remember you saying that, right?
And so after the clinic, I handed him my guitar and I said, can you show me something that he mentioned during the clinic that he got so far with guitar that he had to come up with another instrument, which he invented, and so that he could accompany himself with both hands, both lower register note for the bass, like on the lower register of piano, and then the higher register with this right hand playing on another 5 such strings. And so after I handed him my guitar, he said, you take like a pentatonic position here, and I understood all that stuff already. And then he said, but look at if you could take another position at that same scale and you can add them together. And he just went, I went, that's it. So I started writing down everything that I was learning at the school at that point. A lot of it I knew already because I was taking lessons with Don Mock, who recently passed away, bless his heart. And anyway, he taught me all the basics and all that. But, in the school, it got way more in depth into it. So I was writing down all the pentatonic scales, two-handed, all the arpeggios two-handed, all the chord inversions, just everything, interval skips and all of that. I wrote everything down that I was learning, but I incorporated my right hand into it too. And so that's when I started writing things down so I wouldn't forget it. And by the end of the year, I had a stack of papers like that of all the different things I wrote down. And I figured out a way so that I would be able to remember it. And that's playing, right hand would have a circle around the number. So I drew off these guitar necks, and so the right hand on whatever string, whatever fret would be a circle around it. Then I would pull off and it would be a square on my left hand. And then a hammer on this hand would be a triangle. And then a pull off with this hand would be a diamond shape. So I got all this down and I wrote it all down that way. And then at the end of the year, when I played at the graduation ceremony in March of 1979, I performed at the ceremony, and like everybody went crazy because I played a couple of songs, but the only thing I did was everything I played was all just two hands on the neck, and nobody had seen me do that before. And so, I guess at this point, because I think the Van Halen album was out, but I wasn't listening to radio. I didn't have one at that time, but everybody, kind of thought, oh, this is completely different from what Eddie's doing. And so I went and listened to what he was doing, and I go, oh yeah, that's just like the triplets, the hammer on, pull off, and then hammer on, so. But I really got in depth with it, as far as the music theory, like I said, the chord inversions and the arpeggios and the interval skips and all that. And so after the ceremony, there was Howard Roberts, who wrote the curriculum for the school. And he's a genius jazz player. And then Tommy Tedesco, who was LA's #1 studio guy from the 50s, 60s, 70s. Every time you hear, like a cartoon or a sitcom or TV commercials, that's him playing on all that stuff. You know what I mean? And so both of them approached me after the clinic or after the graduation ceremony, and they said, man, you should write a book on that. And I kind of laughed and I said, I got enough for 3 books right now. And so they said, we want to take you to our publisher, which was Tales Identic Publishing. And so the next day I went in and I brought a bunch of my handwritten stuff and I showed the publisher how to read it, and then I demoed it for them. And in 10 minutes I had a publishing deal. So I put out my first book after that. So then
That's amazing.
So then I wrote 2 more, but this technique, as far as I know, nobody had ever written down anything about it, like a few people, like that I mentioned, like Harvey Mandel and, of course, Steve Buffington in Seattle. And then also, Emma Chapman, who got so far with it, he had to accompany himself with that instrument. So it was pretty cool, and then I thought, okay, this is my breakout, from the normal guitar, and I was doing a lot of it with jazz and stuff. So people didn't know what the heck that was. It was like so far out there.
Well, the question I have is, when you introduced it and played it, you were obviously using electric.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was all electric.
Was it just like a clean tone,
no,
or was it actually?
It was distorted. I was playing these jazz standards, but completely cranked out and distorted. And so some of the jazz purists there didn't really care for it. I was like the only guy in the school that had a solid body guitar and a shag haircut and bell-bottom boots and platform shoes with a skin-tight leather jacket. They used to make fun of me. I'm going, hey, this is my look. I've been playing professionally for years. And so, once we got to know each other, it was really cool, because everybody traded licks. The students were from all over the world. And so everybody had a different concept of guitar. So you learned as much from the students as you did from the teachers. because everybody was exchanging ideas. And it was a really positive atmosphere because everybody just wanted to learn. Everybody just wanted to eat it up. Their appetite for knowledge and theory was just off the roof, So it was really cool to be in that atmosphere.
That's amazing. Was there any, like, it was distorted, but would you have delay on it too, so it rang a little bit more, and how would you? I'm just trying to picture what that would sound like, just like you're just kind of playing it by yourself. That's amazing.
Oh, well, what I did to keep notes from ringing out and everything is I would tie a sock around the end of the neck,
Really, eh? Okay.
Yeah. And so that was my thing. Everybody always watched me, in the school, they would see me walking around with a sock on the end of my neck going, what the heck's that for? They said, well, I got to mute out the notes when you're playing with a high gain. You're going to have notes ringing out. So the way I calmed it down was by just tying a sock kind of loosely down at the end of the neck and perfectly. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now the other question I have about it is, so you're using on your right hand all four fingers?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So whatever I was playing with my left hand, I would try to emulate that with my right hand, but a lot of times it was different patterns, of course. So that was a bit tricky. It's almost like you had to get your left hand to react automatically, and all your concentration went onto your right hand. Because, as I said, I was already been playing for a number of years. At that point, when I went to the school, I'd already been playing for 8 years, 5 years professionally. So my left hand was already fairly well trained. And so then by the end of when I graduated, I had trained my right hand to pretty much be able to play independently from my left hand. So all my concentration then went just to my right hand. You see, so that's a tip. If you're learning that technique and you're playing with all four fingers, get your left hand down automatically, and then really put all your concentration on your right hand.
Did it become like muscle memory to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the shapes and everything, you start remembering them, and just like if you were to play, like a D minor triad, and then you play it up the neck like this, or you put a G major triad on top of it, or whatever, but you learn how to do that. And so all of these triad shapes and chord inversions and all that, and all the different scales, you start to learn, from left to right hand independently. So they're kind of working independently one another. So
that's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that
absolutely.
with me. That's I was very intrigued because as I was reading the book and you're kind of describing it, but I was like, there's a little bit more. Like my brain wants to know a little bit more.
Yeah. And I would have gotten further into it, but I thought this isn't just a book for guitar players. This is a book for everybody to read. Otherwise I could have gotten really into the theory and all that, and recording techniques and all that kind of stuff. But I just kind of touched on it. A little bit here and there so that people had a basic understanding of what I was doing.
Well, my girlfriend and I was telling her I was talking to you today because she knew when I was reading the book I said, do you remember Steve Lynch? I was reading the book in the summer, and she's like, oh yeah. I said, well, check it. You just posted a video of you working with Loud and Clear.
Yeah.
So I said to her, I was like, here, check this out. So I played her the clip of it. And she was watching your hands, and she's like, "Wow." Good. I like it when people are, when they get enthusiastic about, watch me play something. That's a big part of it. Of course, that gives you that influences you and makes you want to carry on. Of course. Do you work on that stuff very often?
No, I've been so busy lately that I haven't worked on it that much. Because right now my fiance and I, Suzanne, she lives in New Jersey, but we're buying a place together down in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is just south of where I live now. I live in Tampa right now. It's just south of that. And thank you. And so after 4.5 years, we'll finally, she was spending winters, down here, and I was spending the summers up there, but now we're going to finally be in one place together. So,
that's amazing. Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that. That's good. I wanted to ask you about that's the stuff, the cover.
Yeah.
There's two different covers.
Right. What happened was RCA wanted us to put a a cover song on there, and they wanted it to be American Band by Grand
Right.
Funk Railroad, who was originally did it, right? And so I was opposed to it because I didn't want to take any song off, because back then it was just 10 songs per album. It wasn't, you had to fight to get 11 or 12 on there. You know what I mean? So the standard was 10 songs per album. And so I didn't want to get rid of, I can't remember what song it was that came off, Six String Fever, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah. But I was opposed to that, to taking a song off, because I thought the songs were great. But it was just one of those attempts, by a record company, like we got to make sure this album sells as well as the first one, but it was a little bit difficult. We were rushed to do that second album, and then because we were on the tour the whole time, we wrote while we were on the road, and plus we were also doing soundtracks, songs for movies and television and everything, and so we wrote that whole album on tour, and then we got off tour and we were right in the studio and recorded the second album. We did it in 30 days. Same thing as we did the first album. We did it in 30 days. And so we were rushed to do that, and we ended up producing it ourselves, because the engineer or the producer that we had, he said, I don't know what to do with you guys. You guys know your way around the studio, and you know exactly how to get your sounds. He says, I don't know what to do, And so we let him go back home, and so
Really?
yeah, and so we ended up producing it ourselves with our engineer, Eddie DeLeta. And so who's a very popular producer engineer to this day. And anyway, and that's the way it happened. And the RCA wanted to push it a bit more. And this is a time when also, Bob Summers died, who was the president of RCA. And then Bob Buziak came in and took over. And when he took over, he fired like 50% of the staff out of the people in the headquarters in New York. And these guys were young guys that he hired on. They really didn't have a clue how the music business really worked. And so we were basically teaching them. This is the way you promote an album. So, it was, and it wasn't only us that got hurt by it. It was the Pointer Sisters, the Eurythmics, Kenny Rogers, and remember Mr. Mister? I used to talk to Steve Ferris. We used to go to the same restaurant right down the street from where I lived. And we were complaining about RCA just not doing anything, because their first album went quadruple platinum. And then their second one wasn't doing anything. And so both of us were in the restaurant at the bar bitching about everything, so it was.
That's crazy.
So,
well, it's funny how they like kind of changed it, like put that blue, the red one was first, right? And then they did the blue one.
Exactly.
And I mean, I have it right here. I still have the hype sticker.
Oh, right on.
I got robbed a couple years ago.
Oh,
lost
man.
a bunch of vinyl, so I had to replace it.
Right.
And this is what I got it on Discogs, and it's still in the cellophane.
Oh, great.
Like it's open, but it was in the cellophane.
Yeah, and all those albums, everything's going to be, available again, especially on streaming. I'm working on final details with Sony right now as we speak. That the final details are coming. So then I'll be making an announcement, and when everything's available for streaming and things are available to purchase again as well. So
that's awesome, because the streaming site I use, and Loud and Clear is actually the one is my favorite one, believe it or not, and it's not on my streaming site, which I was so disappointed.
Well, a lot of people are disappointed with that, and that's also my favorite Autograph album is Loud and Clear, because we had more time to write, and I think at that point, because of all our writing, recording, and touring, we kind of honed our craft as a band. So we really knew what we were doing. And we got Andy Johns, who's, famous with his brother Glenn Johns. I mean, they were engineers and producers on albums, with like John Lennon and David Bowie and the Rolling Stones, and the list goes on and on. I mean, the biggest of the big, you know what I mean? They were doing those albums, including Led Zeppelin. They did a lot of work with Led Zeppelin. Wow. I'm going, okay. Well, that would be nice. And Andy Johns actually produced our demo tape that we did that got us the tour with Van Halen. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So that's what David heard, and because the drummer Kenny Richards and him were jogging partners, so You know,
Yeah.
they'd meet every morning up on Sunset Boulevard and 8:30 and go jogging up and down Sunset Boulevard. And so, you know, David just asked him what is he doing? He said, "Oh, this new project I'm involved with." We didn't have a name. We were just guys that were just jamming together. And so he played it for him. David loved it.
You guys were all in other bands.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Like me and the keyboard player, we were, committed to Holly Penfield, but we were involved with that, and that was on Dreamline Records. And then Steve Plunkett was with Silver Condor with guitar player Earl Slick on Columbia Records. Kenny at the time was playing in a group called The Coup on A&M Records, and Randy, the bass player, was playing Lita Ford. So we were all busy with these other gigs, but we'd already recorded with them and done all that kind of stuff. So we had free time to go out and do basically whatever we wanted. So we said, yeah, we want to go out on tour. And we had to think of a name on the way to the first gig, which was from L.A. We had to drive from L.A. all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, straight across Interstate 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's a long drive. And so we thought of a name on the way there. And that it stuck. We thought of Autograph because it kind of has we had a signature sound, and so we thought, okay, Autograph would be befitting. And so we thought, well, we'll call it that for the time being. But then, you know, by the time that tour was over, and at that point we had already signed with RCA backstage at Madison Square Gardens, and so we're going, okay, you know, I guess the name's going to have to stick because we've already played in this plethora in front of this plethora of different people. I mean, you know, hundreds of thousands at that point, you know, and so it stuck. And RCA pulled us off the tour to go in and start recording the first album, and we did it. So
That's amazing. And I mean, the visually everything, like the logo always looked great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
The little, you know, like the A.
Yeah.
The A with the
graph going through it.
I don't
see. It's auto
the graph going.
Graph, the graph, and that's why I put that graph on my guitar. You see, that's a graph going across there for autograph. Sure.
I never realized that, Steve. I'm so
now
sorry.
You know, you're the first to know.
No, that's awesome. That's wicked. And I mean, I'm just I have Loud and Clear here too.
Oh yeah,
And I remember when that came out and seeing visually that album cover.
Uh-huh.
And still I believe Mark Weiss did that photo session.
Yes, he did. Yeah, did an excellent job.
And and were you guys like, your look's a little bit different on this album? Like, you guys still look the same, but it seems a little bit more coordinated. Was that on purpose? Like, did you guys decide we're gonna? We
had matured as a band, and we kind of decided to take it into a look where everything was a bit more coordinated. You know, previously it was more colorful and everything, but we wanted to get out of that. You know, we thought, you know, that's not really us. The whole, you know, spandex, multicolored fluorescent colors and all that, that's not us. And so that's when we took an approach to like, let's do it this way. You know, let's wear darker clothes. Everybody was more comfortable with that too. And so that's the direction we went in. Now, mind you, we're like in 1984, when we signed with RCA, I was 29 and Kenny, the drummer, was 29. The rest of the guys were already in their early 30s. You see, so we weren't the new kids on the block. We had already recorded albums before. We toured before. We'd done all that before. We weren't fresh in the studio and everything. That's why we were able to go in and record, you know, produce, master, everything, you know, within 30 days. Just boom, in there and out of there. The only album that we took our time on, which took 3 months, was with Loud and Clear. And I'm glad we had that opportunity because it sounds more polished as well.
Yeah, it's a great, and it's a great sounding album, and the songs are so solid.
Yeah.
There's and it's funny to me because in the ballad era, I never like every time I dream, seems like it would have been a great radio.
Yeah, and again, everybody was saying that. Everybody was saying that about Changing Hands off the second album. God, this is a mega hit. But it's the record company if they don't promote it correctly. And like I said, RCA was going through all these changes. Well, they were still, even in 87 when we released the third one, they were still going through changes at that point, you know. And so a lot of people thought we really got stiff because those that bought the whole album, they'd go, "You guys have a hell of a lot more than just turn up the radio. You have some really great, well-written and produced songs," and so, of course we were disappointed. We were really let down by the record company, that they didn't put more promotion behind it, because like I said, we were seasoned guys. We knew what we were doing, as far as writing the parts and playing our instruments, and we had a sound together that was really magnetic, and so we were disappointed because we knew it was the record company that just wasn't putting enough into it. And that's the way the fans feel too.
And totally, because it's such a great album. And you ended up doing a movie soundtrack, the Kirk Cameron, Dudley Moore movie,
right? Yeah.
Which 2 songs were on that off the album. Now, did those songs, which are "Dance All Night" and "She Never Looked That Good for Me," which is one of my favorite tracks on the album. I love it.
"She Never Looked That Good for Me."
I always thought.
Yeah. That's
I
one
always
of my favorites that we play too. It's just like,
it's clever.
Yeah, it's a cool
clever
song
title
to play, because it's do 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 do. There's a lot of accents in there that you would not normally expect, and this was a part of our writing that had matured. We went into not writing the normal bridge parts anymore. We were always pretty good at that, though. But it was more refined on this album, where you could really hear, say, the modulations, moving up, a whole step up, while we're doing the outro chorus and everything. And so, those kind of things just came to us naturally. It wasn't something we had to think about. We just, let's just do this. And it was becoming kind of a main source of songwriting back then, to kind of kick it into 5th gear when you're going into that last chorus. And we were one of the early ones that were doing that, of that genre. So.
Yeah, was it were those songs? Was the album already out when those songs were used in the movie, or was it?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was almost like, I'm thinking of when we filmed that, Like Father Like Son, and it was just right around the same time. You know what I mean? That the album was released loud and clear, and then we played on that. I think it was right neck and neck. You know what I mean? So. And then we went right off on tour. After we filmed that, we went to the airport and we flew out. We were on tour, so we started the tour right then.
That's amazing.
And so, we had a lot of those moments where, man, we flew back. We played San Antonio and recorded a live album in San Antonio, Texas, and then we flew into LA to film American Bandstand with Dick Clark, right? And so we did that, and then we had to fly back out and play another gig in Detroit that night. So it was like we were bouncing all over the place. And then after that gig in Detroit, then the next night we had to drive to Cleveland and play a show there. So it was absolutely crazy. That's the way our schedule was, though. We had 11 days on. We'd play 11 days on, take 1 day off, because all of the dates. A lot of the bands that we toured with, like with Van Halen, Motley Crue, and they would only play, usually 4 nights out of the week. Well, we'd fill up those other days with more gigs. Like theaters and clubs and casinos. So we'd fill up all those dates. So we were constantly working, 11 days on, 1 day off. And we did that for years, so we had our road legs, that's for sure. We got a lot of practice.
Oh, no doubt. But I mean, yeah, exactly. But that keeps you out there playing, and you're not, you're making up that time, where you're not opening. And you're making money too, right?
Absolutely.
You want to keep that thing going, right?
And we made a lot of money doing those extra gigs. Because it was us headlining, so boom, we got the pot, So that was great.
That's amazing. Now, let's discuss the recent releases on FNA Records of Cloud 10 and Sender to Me.
Yeah,
I checked out the website today to look, and there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Besides
absolutely.
the album, a lot of merchandise. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Steve Lockett he did a superb job on all that, and so we're looking at remarketing them. We're going to put some more push behind that and really get it more out there. And of course, and then we'll have the Sony thing. So we're timing it all, so that everything's done in a very timely manner so that everybody can absorb everything that we have out there. But the whole thing with Autograph, it's far from over because there's so much material out there and so many great stories, and you never know what's going to happen in the future, right? So
exactly. No, and I loved going on it, and like I was looking at the T-shirts and the shot glasses. So
right.
If you're into Autograph, go check this stuff out because it does look amazing. Yeah, it really does. And I like the fact like it's not, those albums aren't on streaming. Yeah, that I haven't found yet. Right, I looked it up. Yeah. And you can buy a download of it, which I thought was brilliant as well. Yeah,
right. Exactly. So,
but the covers look great too, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I had a hand in that, but so me and Steve worked together, with his designer, and we came up with those. And so I thought they came out looking really great, especially the one with the girl holding the autograph ball,
yes.
With the logo we're
that
talking
looks
about.
So awesome.
I thought that looked really cool. And it fit into that theme of, what we did with our first and second album covers too. So yeah, still carried that theme.
Yeah,
always that robotic thing and high tech looking, and just like when we came up with the whole, the lettering for Autograph and that logo, that we always wanted that high tech, cutting edge kind of look to it, where you're not sure what era it's from. In fact, you look at it to this day, and it still looks very modern. And that's the cool thing. It's one of those that can be used forever.
Yeah, and I noticed that, I can't remember which album it was. I think it was Cloud 10, maybe Angel in Black, which Bangalore Choir did that song on their first album.
Oh, really? You mean?
Yeah. You've never heard it?
No, I haven't. Angel, it's the same one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't even know that. We released that. We recorded it around 88, I guess. Yeah. Probably 88 we recorded that. And that was a bunch of demos that we were doing when we were going to sign. After our 3-album deal ran out with RCA, we were doing demos for Epic Records. And so that was part of the demos, like that whole album, Missing Pieces, the album you were thinking of. Yeah. And so, we recorded that in 88, but then it was released in 97. It's 1997. So when did theirs come out? I'm curious.
On Target came out it's on Giant Records, 1992. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we recorded it in 1988. So I didn't even know the Bangalore Choir. Is it the same song though?
Oh, yeah, it's the same song. It's the lead off track on the album.
Okay.
And I mean, I've had David Reese on the show a few times, and we've talked about that song. And I can't recall how he ended up doing it. There's also a song on that album written by Aldo Nova and John Bon Jovi. So
okay, wow, very interesting. Wow, cool. Yeah, there's some great songs on that Missing Pieces album. That unfortunately,
great stuff.
The whole thing with Epic Records. That's right when the whole grunge thing started to take over. So basically, Epic had to bail, and we thought it was a good idea. We were all in for just bailing from that. We actually broke up in December of 1989, the very end of the 80s, because everything was saturated with the whole grunge thing from Seattle. And that's my hometown of Seattle, so I'm going, wait a minute, everybody. This is the way all the bands sounded up here for decades. This is the Seattle sound. It's nothing new, really. So, but, it took off, and I think a big part of that was a lot of the recorded albums in the 80s from the 80s bands was becoming a little bit too commercialized. And there were so many ballads with tons of reverb on it and everything. And these songs weren't speaking to the audience. You know what I mean? They needed something more wow, like what I grew up with, as I grew up with the Who, Live with Leeds, the Stones, the Beatles, the Led Zeppelin and everything. And so even though they had a polished sound for the time, it wasn't anything like what it became in the 80s. And so I think that the audience needed, like, lyrics that talk more to them. And it ended up being, as you all know, about depression, about addiction, about, just all kinds of negative things, so it actually spoke to what the teenagers and stuff were going through at that time. So I understand why it caught on,
Yeah, it totally made sense. Things needed
right.
to
It
change and evolve,
it had
right?
to happen. Yeah, unfortunately for the 80s guys, but it had to happen. We understood it. We understood it completely, and we had to bail on the whole thing with Epic, and so we all went our separate ways. But we had such a wonderful time during that, like 6.5 year period. It was just amazing. So,
Yeah, that is amazing. What was I going to say? Oh, it's funny too. We're getting back to that Angel in Black thing. There was a song that Steve Plunkett did on his solo album, the Quality Records one, that the band Every Mother's Nightmare did on their second album too. So those songs, like when I have that on CD, his solo album, and it was cool.
That's awesome.
It was, it sounded like him. It was really good, but putting it on, and I was like, hey, I know this song. And it was kind of like when I heard those autograph demo, the Missing Pieces, and Angel in Black is in there. I was like, hey, I know this song.
Right, exactly.
Which I always love that stuff, because hearing two different interpretations of the same song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it works out cool hearing it from different perspectives,
Exactly. Because it all depends who's in the band and how they perceive it.
Exactly.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to the guitar solo and whatnot.
Yeah.
How they're going to play it and how it's going to differ. Like when you hear, sometimes you'll hear, like, say they'll put out like Kiss, for instance, when they redid Destroyer, and they put the alternate guitar solo on it. And I think it was the one Ace didn't play.
Oh, okay.
And then there's the one that Ace did play. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, after so many years of being used to hearing it one way, hearing it another was a little bit odd.
Right. That's an interesting point, because, Steve Plunkett released, like the first album, Sign In Please, but I think a lot of it was AI generated, because I listened to the guitar part in it, and it played, like it was playing like G major pentatonic, so it sounded real country. And then when the solo came in, and we modulated up to the key of A major, and the solo sounded real country. But you see, when you put that in, those chords into AI, it automatically thinks that because the song's in A major, but I didn't perceive it that way. I perceived most things even when I played major, I tried to make it sound more minor. You know what I mean? So on that song, I played, like in Turn Up the Radio, when we modulated up to the key of A, I played A mixolydian. I wasn't playing pentatonic at all. So it sounds completely different. When you feed something in and it plays back. Now, I'm not sure if Steve Plunkett used AI on it, but that's the way I perceived it, because that's the way AI would perceive it, is they would perceive it more like a country song rather than because it's in a major key. But it's not. You know what I mean? It's obviously not a country song.
Yeah, and that's how AI interprets it, which is kind of weird, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not... Yeah. Because you're the artist and you're the musician and you're playing what what key it's in, but it's also how you perceive it, like how your playing is on it and how you hear it and how you want it to sound.
And the way I wrote the chords for the solo section there is I did it so that I would be playing in A mixolydian mode, which is a major mode, but it sounds completely different from anything that you would hear a country player doing, like in a major pentatonic. It sounds completely different from that, obviously. So, yeah, but with AI, it's going to interpret it a certain way.
Yeah. That's scary.
Yeah.
AI scares me. I'm not going to lie.
It does.
It scares me
I can get into that's a whole different topic, and I can get into that. I'm reading a book right now about that whole thing, and wow. Now, basically, the experts that are in AI are saying, in the next 5 years, you're not going to believe how much everything's going to change in the medical industry and everything, across everything. And they said in the next 10 years, you won't even recognize where we are right now. It'll be completely different.
Oh my goodness.
So
That's scary.
it's going to be good
That's
things.
scary.
I think it's going to be mainly positive.
It's going to be good things.
It's going to be mainly good things, you know, and the powers that be, of course, they'll want to manipulate it and everything, but the people aren't going to have it. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I was going to mention this. I mean, we were talking about Steve, and I was very surprised he put out an album last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah.
I was like, there it is.
Yeah,
I bought it.
Exactly.
Because I was curious.
Yeah, sure.
I was curious, and it was good to see him back and doing some music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, so.
He had been so busy with being like a writer for all these different TV things, like Seventh Heaven and all that, and he'd been just immersed in the whole writing thing, you know, and that's why when we were initially, you know, going out to do more shows, he passed on it because he was way too busy to actually go out and perform and do any kind of a tour or anything like that again. But he was just so that was that, you know. So.
Well, I did get to see you play at M3.
Oh yeah.
Just before COVID.
Oh, right, exactly, yeah. And
which was
and
awesome.
then COVID, that was March of 2020. So
so it was May 2019, I think I believe, right?
That would be right.
So,
yes, exactly. That's right, because it's always May that M3 happens. So you're correct. Yeah.
And I was like, I wish they could play longer.
Yeah. Me too.
Because you guys were on earlier in the day, right? Like it was early afternoon, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember what the time slot was exactly, but each time we played, it was a different time slot. So I don't know. You know, we played a few.
Yeah, no, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool. Now, Steve, I want to thank you so much.
Absolutely,
for joining me today. It was such a pleasure, and it was like I said, I've been a fan since I was a kid, more or less.
Right.
I mean, I'm 50 now, so going back to the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and Autograph was one of those bands that I always listened to.
Well, that's very cool. I'm glad to hear that.
And I was happy when I got to read your book because I'm always interested in that stuff. And I mean, people, like I'm going to say it, like if you like these autobiography types of things, this is one to read because there's not just music stuff.
Right.
In there. I mean, we didn't even touch on your, like your trips of you being on your own and getting lost in the jungle.
Right.
And stuff
like
that. Right.
The thing is, it's just like all these crazy things happened to me during my life. And so I remembered them because I would talk about them because my friends and family would ask questions about it. Well, how did it go down to Costa Rica? And so I'd have all these stories, you know. And so everybody kept saying, you've got to write a book about your life for years and years. I mean, this goes back 30 years, you know. And so I started writing down about probably maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that, little one-sentence reminders of all of the different experiences that I had, you know? And as soon as I read that sentence, then I would go, oh, yeah, I remember that story, you know? If I wouldn't have written down all of those, I wouldn't have remembered all those stories. But, you know, so I wrote them down. And then when I decided that was it, you know, when COVID hit, that's when I finally decided, okay, now's the time to write the book. And so I did. I wrote it the whole time COVID was happening, you know, and then of course more stuff happened, like the Hall of Fame and all that, and some unfortunate things in there as well. But you know, and so and I got engaged to get married and all these wonderful things, you know what I mean? And so anyway, you know, I started putting those ideas together in chromatic order. You know, chronological order. And so you can hear I'm a musician, chromatic, chronological. That's funny. I just caught myself there. And so, you know, by the end of it and all this stuff had gone by and I went, my God, I have some pretty interesting stories in here. And you know, the publishing company, and they wanted to take some stuff out. But luckily, you know, I stuck to my guns and I said, you know, I'm going to keep it pretty much the way it is, you know. So I edited a little bit out, but, you know, not much. You know, I wanted to keep it
I'm glad you did because the story of you being, not making the bus.
Yeah, right.
And then everybody waiting for you. And I mean, I'm not going to say anymore because that was such a good part. And
You mean
the
down in
Costa Rica
Mexico,
thing.
right?
In Mexico, yeah. And then the Costa Rica thing with the car.
Yeah, right.
And anyways, people got to read it because it's really, and I was really into that. And because, like I said, it's great to read about all the music stuff and the touring.
Sure.
But I felt like after I read the book, I'm like, you know what? I feel like I know him a little bit more on a personal level.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I laid it all out there. I didn't hold back on anything.
Yeah.
It's all right there. And so, most people don't know any of this stuff, about me. So like the whole heroin addiction when I was really young and living in the town. That's not things that I really talked about much before, and a lot of stuff in there I never talked about publicly. And so
it surprised me. I was surprised. I was reading and I was like, what the heck? I was like, wow.
Yeah. Like here I am on
like, this guy's lived a life.
LSD, watching my face morph into different things, and everything. And so
that's right.
But it all happened. So I just wrote it down as it happened, and I remember all these things from telling other people the story. So.
Oh man, and like I said, they have to read this to understand like the whole thing was good. I think I read it in a week.
Oh, great! Okay,
between opening it and reading it, I went through it pretty quick because I was, like I said, I was on a plane for 3 hours, 700 kilometers from Winnipeg, so. I think I read quite a bit of it there and then on the plane from Toronto to Winnipeg. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then I lost it. Anyways, Steve, again, is there anything you'd like to add before I let you go?
We covered everything. We got to talk about the book a bit, and we got to talk about FNA Records putting out these demos, Cloud 10, and Send Her to Me. And then also, the upcoming thing that's going to be, Sony streaming everything again, which is going to be fantastic.
That's amazing.
People have been waiting for years and years for that, and so, it's all coming about. So
cool, that's good. Yes, so those albums, and I will say this: FNA Records. It's FNA.com, or I think FNARecords.com. I think. FNARecords.com. Yeah, to check those out. And the book you can get. I got mine on Amazon, and my second copy on Amazon. It's pretty easy to find.
Yeah. So. Just type in the title and it'll come right up. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Steve, enjoy the rest of your night, and again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Pleasure having. All right, let's do it again sometime.
Right. Okay, sounds good, Steve. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.